Ladies and gentlemen, can I get your attention? Thank you, thank you. Well, here we are today to celebrate Valerie Campbell. We're just going to have a very short introduction, and I have managed to twist her arm so that I can steal her for a few moments to ask her a few questions, and then afterwards we will close in prayer. So, first of all, thank you all so much for attending today. Unlike for most people, 2020 has been an auspicious year for Valerie. Firstly, she turned 21 again, and looking damn good on it. And secondly, she will be publishing her third best-selling, award-winning book, The Difference. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Valerie Campbell. So, who is Valerie Campbell? She is an enhanced relationship coach, a best-selling author. Yes. She speaks to millions weekly via her radio show on Bshani radio. And that show is called The Secret Vibe. If any of you haven't heard it yet, I would strongly recommend that you check it out. And here she affects spiritual growth, particularly in the arena of dating. Her spiritual teachings are based on love your neighbor as you love yourself. And Valerie explains what led to her study. This actually led to her study of the Bible, law of attraction, and spiritual psychotherapy. Hopefully more on that later. Her coaching business primarily started due to insights gained in her role as the only female managing in excess of 100 men, fondly known as Valerie's boys. And it was here that she learned the influence of her feminine energy to compel her boys, unlike her fellow male counterparts, to go over and beyond their line of duty. Today, she now teaches her secret vibe via various platforms to effect positive change in all areas of life. Vibe is an acronym for vision, intention, beliefs, and expectations. Miss Campbell is of West Indian origin. She's a fabulous mother and an even more fabulous grandmother, and she lives in London. Valerie Campbell. Yes. So, Valerie, born and bred in London. Tell us, are there any key moments in your childhood that stand out?
Moments in my childhood. Okay, so I'm the second eldest of 11 children. Football team, 6 girls, 5 boys. Growing up in a West Indian parentage, very strict in those days. You were seen and very quiet. You know, so you just did what you were you were told to do, basically. And we were strictly reprimanded. And I think perhaps at that time as well, there wasn't that balance where you were able to express your feelings, express what was on your mind. The word no didn't even exist. You just did as you were told. So that was really my childhood.
So, I mean, you talk very candidly, and as you say, we're not going to go too deep. Today isn't really that day. But, I mean, there have been certain experiences in your childhood that I think it's fair to say would have taken some guts for you to address, come forward and address publicly. So, I mean, in a nutshell, just as you say, you were in an environment where children were seen, not heard. What was it that helped you make yourself heard?
As I grew up, because of my childhood experience, I was very shy. I know you probably find it hard to believe that now. Very shy, and because in those days, my dad, there was a lot of racism around at that time. And, there were signs that said no niggers, no dogs, no Irish. And my dad worked at Buckingham Palace. at that time, and he would bring home, I guess, a lot of the anger that he experienced there. And so when he came home, it was more like I used to call him the wolf, because I was very much into reading fairy tales at that time. And so growing up, I kind of I didn't know how to use my voice. It became trapped inside of me. And so growing up as an adult, I carried that into the workplace. And I knew it wasn't good. It wasn't serving me. And so I made a conscious decision to change.
So can you remember your first romantic relationship? Looking back now with 2020 vision.
Clean now.
Jay's shaking her head. Yeah, because my first romantic relationship wasn't a totally wholesome one, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my voice, and it was one that actually led me to have counselling, because I was so lost. But whilst I was in counselling, I found out that even though I was lost, I hadn't lost my value. And so that would then lead me on the path of personal development. So for a lot of people at that time, probably on a Friday night, it was cinema tickets and a bag of popcorn. For me, it was a seminar ticket and a notepad, because I was trying to find myself, and just really growing more into the spiritual self and just understanding who I am.
So I'm glad you mentioned the spiritual aspect. Spiritual psychotherapy. I think we're all dying to know what's that all about.
Spiritual psychotherapy is just understanding the spiritual psyche of yourself. So I grew up in a Christian household, was brought up in the Roman Catholic, but when I got to a certain age, I was always seeking God, bounced from church to church, until I came to ICANN. Then I stopped, because that's my church. And also, I read a lot of books around that time. So like one of my top books is by Byron Katie. It's called Loving What Is. And another top book is called A Course in Miracles, which I felt expanded my understanding of the word. It was very complementary to understanding the Bible at that time. And I've always been the type of person, I just don't look at things on a superficial level. I always want to go deep, very deep, and understand why something is the way it is.
So just very quickly, you mentioned the Bible. I mean, most people would consider that to be one of life's best manuals. How has that helped you shape the woman that Valerie is today?
In a very profound way. There have been times where, I've had to call upon the word, or once you kind of know the word, or you've got scriptures within you, they come to the surface to assist you in whatever problem you're dealing with at that moment in time. And that's what helps you to learn who you are. Because in this world, a lot of people think that they're programming, what the TV says, what social media says, what their parents says, or the culture that they're born in. But that's who they think they are. It's not who they are. And so in me understanding that I'm a child of the Most High, it was me taking on the identity of how God actually sees me, as He created me.
And just looking at the other side of your teaching, or your training ground, shall we say, you talk about your boys. We're all dying to know how Valerie dealt with her boys. So when you got into that situation where you found yourself managing over 100 men, 120 I think, 120. To be precise, what was it like going into that situation? Were you aware that this was training ground and that it would stand you in good stead in the future?
At the time, no, because I wanted to be bold. Shy wasn't serving me. So I actually said, I am bold. And I believe in the power of I am, whatever you claim yourself to be. I don't really see it as an affirmation, I see it as a recognition of who you are. So me recognizing that I am bold, as God would have it, his universe conspired to have me thrown into that environment. So I started off as an administrator, and then I worked myself up to a manager. So I managed over 120 men for over 10 years as a single female, only black female at that. And let's just say that on the journey, while I was there, when I had relationship problems, I would go to my boys, as I fondly called them, and they would say, "What, V, you're actually falling for that? Are you for real?" and they would correct me. And so I remember there was one guy, and he'd say to me, "Valerie, I'd be banned from the round table for telling you this." So he would literally break down man codes, and then I would tell my girlfriends about it, and they'd implement it. And then, of course, it's like, hey.
Popular with the girlfriend.
Yes. And I called the essence of women who were able to attract quality responses from guy, I called it the vibe. And then one day, one of the girls said, "Oh, Valerie, you should write a manual on that." So I ended up writing She's Got That Vibe.
And she says it all so casually. I ended up writing She's Got That Vibe.